Good morning, and thank you for being with us. We're about to enter the third week of testimony in the trial of Michelle Troconis. Troconis is charged with conspiracy to commit murder, hindering prosecution, and tampering with evidence, all in the case of missing mom Jennifer Dulos. Joining me this morning to talk about the case is defense attorney Walter Hussey. Well, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Morning, Eric.
Tell me your impression so far as someone who often stands next to a defendant at the defense table. How do you think the case is unraveling or happening, and do you think it's going well?
I think it's probably going pretty well right now for the state, and you have to anticipate what's going to happen, right? So what they're trying to prove, Eric, is a conspiracy to commit a murder, right? And so they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone committed a murder. In this case, Fotis Dulos, right? If he didn't kill himself, it would have been his trial. In some ways, that's what's happening here. So they're going to try to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed Jennifer, and that's going to satisfy their need. I think it's going to satisfy the family's need, and so in that sense, the trial is going very well. But they still got to link it up with Michelle, and I haven't seen that yet.
So just for, you got a couple of lawyers using lawyer words here, but the conspiracy, and there can be conspiracy to do lots of things, both civil and criminally, but the basic standard is two people have to act together to accomplish some goal. In this case, they're trying to show two people acting together for a murder, which you say obviously Fotis Dulos won't be able to stand trial, but this gets the state a long way towards convincing everyone he did it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So the conspiracy, like you and I have an agreement, so one of us has to act upon it, right? So I might not do anything, but you may take the do a overt act of, say, in this case, murdering someone. So that's Dulos, Fotis, right? So Michelle doesn't have to participate, but there has to be an agreement for that to happen, and that's really going to be tough to prove.
And in this case, she's the one in the courtroom facing a jury, facing prosecutors. Fotis Dulos, obviously deceased, not able to face these charges, but do you think the prosecution is very focused on that conspiracy charge because of what it would mean for Fotis's actions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's face it. If he didn't kill himself, he's probably going back to jail. They're going to revoke his bond. He would have been in the defense, defense table instead of Michelle. And the state was prepared to go against him, and they wanted him to pay for what he did, right? But since he killed himself, they have no choice. But I think, in a lot of ways, it's pretty shrewd what the state did, charging her as such. That way, they can try Fotis Dulos once and for all and prove to everyone that she didn't disappear. In fact, she was murdered.
In this case, do you think, though, the hurdle they have to get over is showing that agreement with Michelle Troconis?
Yeah, that's everything with Michelle. So, I mean, how do you do that? It's really hard. I mean, I've been through these situations, and a judge will tell the jury, look, you can't look into the minds of people, right? There's probably going to be nothing written. There might be in this case, because I've heard there may be some issue with some of the things that were written by both people, but it's really hard to prove an agreement, and it's usually circumstantially how it's done, without, anything direct, anything express or implicit saying, hey, Eric, let's agree to do X, Y, and Z, and I do it. So in this case, it's tough.
You've seen some of the evidence that we've put in. I think some of it is stuff that, obviously they were keeping things close to the vest, but bloody pieces of clothing, DNA evidence, the videos that we did know exist of Albany Ave and stuff being dropped into sewers. How does that play into what the jurors are going to be ultimately deciding?
Well, in some ways, like I said, that's all going against Fotis Dulos, right? And so you also start to have, let's face it, there's going to be some empathy, some sympathy for Jennifer, for her family, for just the brutal nature of the crime itself. And, right now it hasn't been decided yet, but to say, are they well on their way to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's responsible for the murder? Yes. And would that the sympathy and empathy carry over for Jennifer in the case against Michelle? Well, the judges are going to say, don't do it, but possibly yes.
Obviously, so many people, her family especially and friends, were upset when the idea of this gone girl scenario was floated out there early on in the investigation, that maybe she disappeared intentionally and doesn't want to be found. At this point, we know a probate judge has ruled that she's deceased in the eyes of the law. Do you think the evidence now should, the people watching this trial at home and seeing Matt McFarland's reports from the courtroom can say, I think that probate judge got it right?
Yeah, I would say so, but what really matters is what the jury thinks. I mean, you and I can say what we think, Matt can say what he thinks, but what's proved in that court, and from what I can see, they're well on their way, We are going to, this past week, we also had a video played of her initial statements to police. So obviously, just like any criminal defendant, she has the right to testify or not testify. It's a choice that she'll make with Attorney Schoenhorn. But having that video, is that powerful, and what do you think the jury will make of it? Well, It depends, right? So my understanding of what she said probably wasn't completely truthful, and it was kind of an evolution to the truth. And so that's not uncommon in my experience. People, when they're faced with a situation, when they're talking to the police, aren't always candid. Maybe that's not a great look, but ultimately, in this case, they talked to her a couple times, right? And so things that she did say initially weren't true, and I think she admitted it by the end of the time of her interview. But she still said and maintained that she had nothing to do with it. So I don't know. You gotta ask the jury what they think of it, and then there's going to be a point in time when maybe she might want to testify. And how that works, and I'm sure you know, but maybe your audience doesn't. When the state rests, the defense can put on any type of witnesses they want, but ultimately the judge is going to ask Michelle Troconis, do you want to testify, yes or no? Have you gone over the pros and cons with your attorney? Do you know the risks, the reward, etc.? And that's her choice. It's not going to be Attorney Schoenhorn's. And that's unique because the defendant could, Attorney Schoenhorn could say there's no need to testify, and she could say, no, I want to, and then she would have to. So we're not there yet. We'll see how it plays out.
The jurors, we've already seen 2 jurors being dismissed. As this continues to play out, is that a concern for both sides that there could be something that could lead to a mistrial?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think either side would want to retry it unless you felt that things weren't going well. I'm pretty sure the state's happy with their performance so far. And so far, they really haven't laid a glove on the defense. So I don't think the defense is in any hurry to have a mistrial. So you really, really do not want to do this again.
As people continue to watch this play out, watch our reporting, read articles in the newspaper, as a defense attorney, what will you be watching for that might turn the jury one way or the other as far as her guilt on these 6 felony charges?
Okay, so I don't pretend to know all the evidence, but Attorney Schoenhorn does. So, Erica, I don't think your audience knows this, but in any case, any prosecution, the state's required to turn over everything they have. That would be all the reports, any type of statements, any type of evidence. So you're prepared as a defense attorney. You know what's coming. I don't, you don't. But I think a wild card in this is Attorney Mawhinney. Okay, so he may or may not testify, but he might have a lot to say because he was privileged to what was discussed between Photos, Michelle, and himself. And then again, you have to weigh what he had to say because he gave a statement when he was incarcerated, and then he was free. So that's going to work against him as well. So I think it's going to be interesting if he testifies, what he has to say, does it make sense, and then is it just an effort to get out of jail, or is it really the truth? So I'm waiting for that. Because
he's facing charges as well. We only have about 30 seconds left. Just what you've seen so far, what's your 30-second take on where we stand?
I say stay tuned. You got to keep an open mind, and I think that's really important, especially for this jury. If they're watching this, I hope they're not, because they're not supposed to. But not all the evidence is in yet. The state is off to a great start, but it's far from over.
And still a tough case to prove to make that connection to Michelle.
In my mind, yes.
All right, Walter Hussey, thank you for being with us on CT24.
Thank you, Eric.